distant rumble. The time.
Ah, scary games. So wonderful. So horrible. There's something about a video game with the capacity to set your heart racing and your hands shaking that's difficult to resist, even if the experience of actually playing it is thoroughly unpleasant. This week, of course, sees the release of Layers of Fear 2, so Ian and I thought we'd mark the occasion by recalling the 6 video games that scared us senseless, because to be honest, that was a less scary prospect than actually playing Layers of Fear 2. Take it away, Ian!
It's been about 11 years since the release of the first Dead Space, yet I can't think of many games in that period that have scared me quite as much as this one did, because, well, Dead Space nearly made me faint. Sort of. You see, Dead Space really is a masterclass in video game horror. From the twisted, spiky character design of the necromorphs and their weird, skittery J-horror inspired movements, right through to the incredible 3D sound design that makes you feel like unimaginable horrors are about to burst out of every wall. Every facet of Dead Space has been crafted to perfection in order to create an atmosphere that, completely unsettles you by filling you with a constant sense of creeping dread. Very few games instill a sense of panic in their players as much as Dead Space does, and the opening portion of the game throws you right in at the deep end and shows you that it's not messing about in the slightest. The first time you encounter a monster in Dead Space, the lights are out, the ship alarms are blaring, and you're completely and utterly helpless. Trapped behind a wall of glass, you have to witness a slasher necromorph tear one of your crewmates to pieces, and then all of a sudden, over your comms, people are screaming at you to run. As you leg it down unfamiliar corridors away from the danger and screams, you suddenly hear another slasher just behind you. So close, in fact, that occasionally one of its big stabby arm things will just pop slightly into frame, creating the kind of tense pursuit fear that makes you feel a bit sick. Then when you finally get to the lift and the door closes behind you and you think it's all over, the game really lets you know it's not screwing around with one of the cruelest jump scares ever created by humankind. But anyway, that's not the part that made me nearly faint. I just wanted to give you an idea of how unbelievably atmospheric this game is first, just so you could kind of understand the constant sense of dread I was living with as I played the game. So anyway, I was playing Dead Space one night in my bedroom, the lights were off, and I had a decent pair of headphones on because my partner at the time was fast asleep. Now, this partner occasionally suffered from night terrors, and just as the tension on board the USS Ishimura was reaching fever pitch, and at the point when I was completely absorbed by the game, she sits bolt upright behind me and lets out this horrible scream. Needless to say, I almost crapped in my pants. I was so scared I couldn't breathe properly, and I remember thinking that I might have been having a heart attack or something. Honestly, it's the closest I've ever come to passing out from fear. My ex was fine, by the way. She didn't even remember it happening and went back to sleep instantly, leaving me to have a little panic attack on my own in the dark.
To my eternal shame, I never actually played a Resident Evil game until Resident Evil 4 rolled round. I was well aware of the series, of course, I just never got round to trying it. While I grew up playing Mortal Kombat and the first Grand Theft Auto, childhood me suspected my parents might not agree to let me have an out-and-out horror game, so I never asked. All of this is to say that, when I started playing Resident Evil 4, I had no idea what I was in for, and it scared the crap out of me. I know now, of course, that Resident Evil doesn't mess about as a series. It throws enemies at you from the start, and, while they may be shambling slowly toward you, they will absolutely tear you apart, given the chance. Maybe I was expecting Resi 4 to ease me in a bit, or maybe I underestimated how important headshots were, or how much damage enemies could soak up before dying, but the villagers at the start of the game absolutely terrified me. There's something to their vacancy, their mindless determination to get at you and cut you down, that left me completely unmanned. I practically forgot how to use the controls, although that might have been down to the fact I was playing on the Nintendo Wii, and I would just sort of shuffle about the place, gibbering softly, until I inevitably got overwhelmed. And it's worth bearing in mind that, at this point in the game, the enemies are just people, or so they seem, anyway. The fact I was so utterly terrified by a handful of villagers in drab clothing is testament to the tremendous atmosphere that permeates Resident Evil 4 from the very beginning. That, and it shows you how much of a wuss I am. I eventually learned how to successfully navigate a Resident Evil game and got pretty far in Resi 4, although I don't think I actually finished it, but the first time I tackled the opening section is probably the most scared I have ever been while playing a video game. It's just those muttering villagers.
As you all probably know by now, I love VR, and one of the things that made me fall in love with VR in the first place was Resident Evil 7, which I played and streamed in its entirety in VR. Now, if, like me, you've watched hundreds of horror movies and always thought to yourself, what would I do in that situation? Well, Resident Evil 7 in VR will give you that answer. It starts off like you're starring in your own Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, then parts of it put you in your own Saw movie, then there's tons of body horror and grotesque gore to navigate through, and of course it's full of panic-inducing jump scares. Now, the flat version itself is scary enough to make you do a bit of a fear puke in your lap, but when the entire game world is surrounding you and when the graphics and presentation are so good that you actually feel a threatening physical presence from the Baker family and their army of molded as they bear down on you, well, that's when you'll let out genuine yelps of fear. And I know that's true because it happened to me. Look, I've played so many video games in my life that I often completely forget what happens in them, but thanks to the immersion of VR, I have real vivid memories of Resident Evil 7, like its locations were real-life places I'd been to rather than just flat pictures on a TV screen. The ability to physically peer around corners or over objects as I cowered from my pursuers added so much realism to my predicament, much more so than your standard flat-screen stealth section anyway, and this just made it all the more terrifying. Basically, VR makes the digital threats in front of you seem so real that they could almost reach out and touch you, and that feeling of real-life danger is the secret to Resident Evil 7's incredibly scary atmosphere.
The second game that scared my socks off is Outlast. For the uninitiated, Outlast is a game in which you, a journalist, investigate a supposedly abandoned insane asylum, armed with nothing more than a video camera and a sturdy set of legs with which to run for your life. As you navigate the game, you have to hide from and escape a bunch of murderous inmates, and while I hated the cliched asylum setting, I have to admit, it is very good at putting the wind up people. The fact you can only run or hide in Outlast makes you feel that sense of vulnerability all the more keenly, and it also means you have to stay hidden while watching some truly awful stuff. It's a scary game, in other words, but the real reason it's on my list is not just the fact it's scary, but the way in which I first played it. All the way back in 2013, when I was living with a bunch of friends, a few of us decided to turn all of the lights off, turn the sound on the TV way up, and scare ourselves stupid. We started playing Outlast and passing the controller between us from time to time, but the thing was, we were deliberately squeezed onto the same sofa, so we were touching shoulder to shoulder and hip to hip, meaning if one of us got startled, we all jumped out of our skin. There's something about playing a scary game together in such close proximity, to the extent you can hear and feel each other breathing, that makes the whole experience so much more intense. It was also loads of fun in a slightly masochistic sense, meaning we kept going long after I probably would have stopped to take a break if I were playing alone. Basically what I'm saying is that controller vibration is a cool feature and all, but you haven't really experienced a scary game until you're getting your haptic feedback from other people who are just as afraid as you are, if not more so. It sounds a bit sinister when I put it like that, to be honest, but trust me on this one, it's good fun.
Okay, so Duke Nukem 3D probably isn't a game that most people would think of when asked to list off some games that really scared them, but hey ho, this is your boy Ian you're listening to, so I'm bound to say something bizarre after a while. Anyway, technically it's not the whole Duke Nukem experience that scared me, just certain enemy sound effects, but special mention has to go to one enemy in particular, the Octobrains. Now, Octobrains are these floating squid-like things that fire balls of energy at you, and they absolutely freaked me out when I was younger. Their scream is haunting and so loud, and it sounds kind of like, I don't know, an elephant call mixed with the death rattle of a robot that's just learnt how to feel feelings, and anytime I heard it in the game, it'd send me into a panic. The grunts and the guttural roars from all the other enemies were just as loud and scary back in the day, but oh my word, the noises from the Octobrains still send chills down my spine now. People generally remember Duke Nukem as a dumb 90s action game thanks to all its dick and poop jokes, but looking back at it now, the sound design for its time was genuinely great, and in my mind, that makes it just as much of a horror game as Doom.
A bit like Ian, my last pick on this list of 6 games that scared us senseless is a fairly unlikely one, because it's Dishonored. Now, I know, it's not scary at all, is it? No, it really isn't. Unless you happen to be me, that is. See, I'm not exactly what you'd call a gifted stealth player. In fact, I'd go so far as to say I am perfectly awful at stealth games. But the problem is, I really want to be good at them, so I insist on playing non-lethally. There will be times when I tell myself I'm not allowed to save scam or start over, and if I mess it up, then I just have to keep going, but I never manage to make that rule stick. My desire to do well at stealth is matched only by my incompetence, meaning when I start playing a stealth game, especially one where it can all go as spectacularly wrong as Dishonored, I start to freeze up. I make careless mistakes, I hide in the corner for minutes on end wondering what to do next, but, most significantly of all, I scare myself stupid. It didn't help that when I first started playing Dishonored, I followed my friend's advice and turned off all the on-screen markers leading to bone charms and objectives, and so on, leaving me to fend entirely for myself on the mean streets of Dunwall. While that definitely made for a more atmospheric time, it also meant I never knew where I was in the level or what might be lurking around the next corner, and that scared me senseless. I was so eager to succeed in Dishonored that I found myself unable to push on for fear I might screw it up. I have restarted the first Dishonored game a good 5 or 6 times now, and I have never made it past the 3rd mission. I'm deadly serious. That is how bad I am. So technically, I guess that I am the thing that scares me most about Dishonored, but nonetheless, sit me down in front of that game, and I am a gibbering wreck. Weirdly, just the first one though. Dishonored 2, absolutely fine. And there you have it, 6 games that scared us senseless. What about you? Are there any games, especially unexpected ones, that had you cowering in terror? Let us know in the comments below. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, there are loads more for you to watch. Some of them should be on screen now, so do give one of those a click. Do like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for notifications so you don't miss anything else from Eurogamer, but most importantly, thank you very much for watching, and have a lovely day.
Oh no.